electricity back then, in my naiveness, so it was kind of nice to hear from them about how it was different back when they didn't have any electricity, just to turn on a light whenever they wanted to. So I thought that was quite interesting. I learned a lot about how structured your day has to be and how it really is gambling when you go to do farming, because there is so much of the weather that changes and stuff like that, so you really have to keep that in mind, and it can get hard, obviously, through the Dust Bowl days where it was just kind of hard to get through that, same with the Great Depression. As far as oral history goes, I think that this is a great project. The closest that I've come to oral history is just talking to my grandparents, so it's nice to hear other people's perspectives from it. And I think that the videotaping of all this is a great idea, because when our generation has kids, they're just going to hear our embellished stories, so then here is a nice way for them to really see how it was. Oh no. What else? One thing from the interview that kind of caught my attention, especially, is with the Korean War. My granddad fought in that war, so it was just nice to hear other people's perspectives from it, and the Pearl Harbor, and how Sue's father was building the machinery in World War II. Different things. Not everybody actually fights in the wars, but a lot of people were involved in getting support over there and with all the machinery. So that was kind of a nice way of hearing about it, because all I always heard was the war stories of blood and gore. So, different perspective. What else is there?
Has this driven you to think you'll do some of your own oral histories?
Yeah.
Would you?
Especially, not to put a downer on the subject, but my grandma has Alzheimer's, so it's definitely one of those things that I'd like to talk to her about now while I still have the chance. And same with my grandpa before, they're getting up there in age, so it's a nice thing. And I always hear my mom's side of the family, her mother died when my mom was pregnant with me, so I never got to meet her. So it's one of those things that some people don't get the chance to talk to certain people, so I think that I'll probably take more advantage of it now. Try to get to know different things, because it's history. Once it's lost, it's lost. You don't want to do that. It's always good to keep it in mind. And I want to be able to tell my children and my children's children someday about how my grandparents used to walk uphill both ways, 6 years ago, all the way to school. So.
That's wonderful.
That's cute.
Very good. Good.
Excellent.
Very good. Next.
I'm Heather Hawkins. I'm from Fort Collins, and a lot of what Brittany said, I thought this was a great project. My dad's parents have both died, and so I don't really hear a lot of the stories from his side of the family. He's not really very talkative, and he doesn't enjoy sharing stories like that, so I don't really ask him questions about it. So it was nice to hear about that time from these two, and just learn about life back then. It's so different from how ours is now that I just can't even imagine what all the things that they went through. Take a lot of stuff for granted now, that technology, electricity, all that kind of stuff.
And indoor plumbing.
Indoor plumbing, yes. Yeah, I can't even imagine what it would be like that indoor plumbing.
Oh, yeah.
That would be horrible.
One room schoolhouse, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
I should let-
I know.
Sorry. But, and it definitely makes me want to talk to my grandparents, my mom's parents, about their experiences. They're a little bit younger than my dad's family was, so I hopefully still have some time to ask them those type of questions. My grandmother had a stroke recently, so she doesn't remember it quite as much, and I can definitely tell that her memory's going, so I realize how important it is to talk to her now and see what her life was like, so that I can, again, share it with my kids and my grandchildren, if I have some someday.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Samantha Lloyd from Staten Island, New York, originally from Brooklyn. Pretty much this whole project and just coming out to Colorado in general has been the biggest culture shock of my life. We walked into the room here and we started talking about cows. I've never seen a farm, or only saw one probably about a few days ago. So, learning about different parts of the country for me in this instant has been just a huge, like, reality check of how many different types of lifestyle there are and how many types of ways there are to live. Like, I'm from a big city, like this Fort Collins area to me is technically like a farm. And then just considering going out probably about, I think, what is it, half an hour? About a half an hour or some distance, and to really see a farm area. I think oral history, though, is a great way to keep track of everything, just different parts of the country, different parts of people, where they live, how they lived, their past, their present, future, everything that they've done in their life is just led up to the moment now, just having generations link into each other and just getting different people to understand stuff. I'm definitely going to look into farming now and try to get a little trip down to a farm, because this has been very interesting. I mean, I probably have a piece of grass in my house, probably about that big. That's it. That's my whole property. So this is definitely just like something that I'm probably going to look into just for the sake of learning about someone's past and how this is how they lived, and just this to be a nice way to finish up a project that I think has been really good in the past and right now especially.
Do you have elderly relatives that you still in touch with?
The only grandparents I have live down in Florida, and I really don't talk to them that much, but my dad's parents died when they came over in like the 40s after, actually no, probably came over in the 40s, probably died about in the 60s, 70s from my grandpa was killed in a car accident, and my grandma had, I don't even remember actually, so I actually want to now take a trip down to Florida and go mingle with them just to find out some past of my family. A lot of all my family records and everything, all the pictures that we saw today, I never had the luxury of seeing those because when they came over from Poland and everything was all destroyed. So after the Second World War, so this has been also a nice little gap change and everything, and just getting a brief history of someone's lifestyle.
Thank you.
I'm Hannah Kraft, and I also thought that this was a great project because it's so much more real to talk with people about history rather than to like read it out in a textbook. And I just thought that was really neat. And I'd also, I go through photo albums with my grandma. She's from Kansas, and like I just ask her all these questions. And so I've had a little experience like with looking at old pictures and stuff. And let's see, one of the things that stuck out in the interview to me was the irrigation, because through my research, I learned that Weld County is a pretty dry area. Like you said, 14 inches of rain a year. And so I bet the irrigation was really a wonderful thing, like he was saying. And yeah, this is just, it's been a really fun project, and what else can I say? Well, one of my paternal grandparents both died when my dad was really young, and so I talked with this man that's kind of like my grandpa, who's also a farmer, and I talked to him like about my grandparents, like what they do, and especially this summer I was really interested. And so yeah, I think this is just a great thing to do, and I'd like to talk to as many people as possible, find out.
I think the point they made was too that to when you have these conversations, a mechanism for recording them, because if you want to pass this information on, then it has to be in some form. And now the access to digital media makes it so easy to do. Okay, thank you.
I'm Nicole McDaniel, and I live in Denver. I like this project a lot. I thought it was very interesting to hear it, a first-hand experience, and see the pictures. It was much more real than looking at the textbook or even, I don't know, watching a video. It just felt more personal. I really the most interesting things I thought were the irrigation. I didn't quite understand that before, and it was nice to hear that. And I liked it when Sue was talking about the practicing for like when they had to do the blackouts and during the war, and I thought that was very interesting, and hearing their experiences during the war times, because all the men in my family have been in the war, and my grandparents, grandfathers were in the Navy and Marines and stuff, and it was interesting to hear someone else's perspective. I thought it was interesting I hadn't thought of the lack of electricity or indoor plumbing either. It seemed like that would have been difficult, and I liked that. This summer recently I talked to my mother's mother, so my grandma, and I went through, she has a whole chest of old pictures, and I had gone through that and talked to her because I wanted to get some of the history of her family before anything happens or she gets too old or something. And I really liked this, and some of the pictures looked familiar, and I really liked that.
That's great. Thank you. I hope this does, you talked about reinforce the motivation you might have to make oral history a part of your life, and to spread that among your family. Because it's not, there are others in your family who can do the same thing. And so if you just encourage others to do it, perhaps they will, and then that adds to the greater archive for everybody. So I think you've all done a great job today. Thank you very much. And thanks to Mr. and Mrs. Stevens, Dave and Sue. Thank you so much for coming over today and being part of this.
I also think the project has kept in mind that maybe if we do a videotape of ourselves during larger events, it'd be a really neat thing to be able to pass on. That way they have an oral history of us, like our future generations have an oral history of us from when we're still
that'd be
young, too.
wonderful.
There was on one of the news channels, it was on BBC. There were a couple of guys who were on vacation in New Orleans, and British guys, and they ended up in a hotel, and they were there for a couple of days, and they got forced out of the hotel into the Superdome. And so they had just a camcorder, and they made a video account of their experience, and it was on BBC last night. And it was just that, it was just an ad hoc, here's what's happening to us and how really horrible it is, and how they talked about how they gathered a group together just to defend themselves because it got so, they said it was so dangerous in there. But there it was real-time history, and it could happen to you.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like, when you're a little kid and your parents videotaped you and stuff, and going back and watching what you were like when you were 4, 10, that kind of stuff. This kind of stuff, it's more interesting, there's actual history behind it. You're learning things that you're going to remember later on. They're not just you playing on a swing set. That doesn't mean anything. These have more depth to them and are more important.
We all want to be there when you pet your first cow.
Yes. I think that we should get a video camera for.
We'll take Sam to a farm and get that on video.